On the windswept shores of the Black Sea, near the modern city of Varna in Bulgaria, archaeologists kneel in silence, brushing away layers of soil that have hidden the past for millennia. In 2018, they expected to find what Varna had always promised: gold ornaments, seashells, and the remains of Europe's earliest elite. But what they uncovered appeared, at first, to be nothing more than another skeleton, buried 5,000 years ago in the sandy earth. Yet as the soil fell away and the bones were examined more closely, strangeness began to emerge. The skull bore faint but deliberate cut marks. The bones contained traces of unusual metals, and hidden deep within the marrow was genetic material, preserved across the centuries, waiting to tell a story no one had anticipated. This man, long forgotten, carried within him a forbidden secret, one that would change the way we understand Europe's first civilization. For decades, the story of Varna had been told in a single voice. In the 1970s, the archaeologist Maria Gimbutas of UCLA examined the cemetery and declared it the earliest evidence of social hierarchy in Europe. Her interpretation was echoed by scholars across the world. Some graves were filled with treasures of gold, obsidian, and shells, while others were nearly empty. Here, they said, was the birth of inequality, the first sign of chiefs, priests, and commoners in European history. To generations of students, Varna was not about mystery or ritual. It was about wealth and stratification. The burials were believed to be straightforward reflections of social order, the beginnings of organized society, untouched by the suggestion of forbidden rites or secret practices. That narrative held firm for nearly half a century. But in the 21st century, science began to whisper a different story. When a team led by Hannes Schroeder of the University of Copenhagen and Wolfgang Hack of the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig sequenced the DNA of one particular skeleton, they saw something astonishing. When we sequenced the genome, Schroeder later recalled, we immediately realized this individual was not local. His ancestry connected him directly to populations in the Caucasus, hundreds of miles away. The results, published in Nature in 2021, were undeniable. This man had not been born in Varna. He was a foreigner, a traveler who carried with him the genes of a distant homeland. At Oxford University's isotope laboratory, further analysis confirmed the discovery. Strontium signatures in his teeth revealed that his childhood had been spent in a geological environment utterly different from the Balkans, pointing toward the mountains of the Caucasus. The surprises did not end there. In his bones, researchers detected traces of arsenic-laced copper, a metal rarely found in Varna at that time, associated instead with early metallurgical traditions far away. This man, buried among the wealthy dead of Varna, had lived a life saturated with technologies and practices foreign to the community that received him. He was not just a visitor, he was something else, a figure whose life had been defined by movement, trade, and perhaps ritual authority. In Leipzig, inside the sterile white rooms of the Max Planck Institute, researchers worked meticulously to unlock his secrets. Ancient DNA is fragile, vulnerable to contamination by even a single modern fingerprint. The team drilled carefully into the petrous bone of the skull, the densest bone in the human body, and extracted fragments of genetic material. Working with ancient DNA, Wolfgang Hack explained, is like listening to a faint whisper across thousands of years. You have to strip away all the noise of the present in order to hear the true voice of the past. Using the powerful Illumina high-sec sequencer, billions of fragments of DNA were read and reassembled, building a genetic portrait of a man whose roots lay not in the Balkans, but in the Caucasus. Meanwhile, specialists at Oxford measured the carbon and nitrogen isotopes in his bones to reconstruct his diet. The results showed something striking. Unlike the people of Varna, who relied heavily on grains and farming, this man's diet was rich in seafood. He had eaten differently, lived differently, and carried a story apart from those around him. Christina Papageorgopoulou of the University of Thessaly compared his skull and grave goods with more than 50 other burials in the cemetery. The differences were clear, she said. He was not just a foreigner. He occupied a special role. His grave contained obsidian from Anatolia, spondylus shells from the Aegean, and fragments of strange metal. Each object hinted at vast trade networks stretching across continents, networks in which he was not a mere participant, but perhaps a central figure. Then came the discovery that would shake even the most cautious scholars. In 2022, a study in PNAS applied paleoproteomics, the analysis of ancient proteins, to his teeth and bones. Within them were molecular traces of the opium poppy, Papaver somniferum, and resin from the terebinth tree, substances associated with trance, altered consciousness, and ritual use. For the first time, there was hard scientific evidence that psychoactive substances had been part of prehistoric European ritual. "This is extraordinary," said David Reich of Harvard University. "We may be looking at one of the earliest ritual uses of mind-altering substances in Europe. This isn't speculation anymore. It's preserved in the molecular record." The implications were staggering. Here was a man not born in Varna, exposed to metallurgy before the locals, buried with exotic goods, and carrying within his bones the signatures of opium and resin. Who was he? A priest trained in forbidden rites? A shaman who mediated between the living and the dead? Or perhaps a sacrificial victim brought from afar for a ritual too dangerous or sacred for locals to endure? Schroeder was careful in his conclusions. "We can't say exactly what role he played," he explained, "but everything points to a ritual significance, one that went far beyond ordinary burial practice." The story of Varna was changing. No longer was it simply the dawn of wealth and inequality. It was also a crossroads, a place where people, objects, and ideas converged from across the ancient world. Varna was not just a society of gold. It was a society of networks, connecting distant lands through trade, migration, and shared rituals. When placed in the wider context of human history, the echoes are unmistakable. Across the globe, humans have always sought transcendence through ritual substances. In the Amazon, shamans drank ayahuasca. In ancient Greece, priests at Eleusis consumed the sacred kykeon. And here, on the shores of the Black Sea 5,000 years ago, a man carried opium and resin into his grave. It reminds us, Reich reflected, that the human quest for transcendence through ritual and altered states is as old as civilization itself. For modern science, the discovery has profound meaning. By tracing the earliest use of psychoactive plants, researchers can better understand the deep history of human interaction with chemicals, both in healing and in spiritual life. It provides a glimpse into the origins of medicine, ritual, and belief. And it shows that cultural diversity and genetic exchange were part of Europe long before recorded history. As the camera lingers on the bones resting quietly beneath the soil of Varna, the enormity of the story becomes clear. A man who lived and died 5 millennia ago still speaks to us today. Not through words, but through the molecules preserved in his body, the shape of his skull, the isotopes in his teeth. Each fragment of evidence adds to the chorus. Schroeder summed it up simply. Every skeleton has a story, but sometimes one story can rewrite the history of an entire civilization. The sun sets over the Black Sea, painting the waves with gold. In the quiet, the skeleton remains where it has always been, but its secrets are no longer silent. History is not finished. It is rewritten each time we uncover the whispers of the past. This man, foreign-born yet buried in Varna, carried a forbidden secret that forces us to reconsider the beginnings of ritual, of belief, and of human connection. In death, he lay silent. In science, he speaks again. And when we listen, we discover that the past has never ended. It waits patiently beneath the earth to be found once more.